Do you remember it? That feeling of coming home, the click of the door, the dropping of the backpack, and making a beeline for the television. It was a world painted in bright, bold colors, a world of animated friends and catchy theme songs that promised adventure and, most importantly, comfort. This was our sanctuary, a place where problems were solved in 30 minutes, complete with a moral at the end. We absorbed these stories, these simple narratives of good triumphing over bad, of friendship conquering all. It was a gentle introduction to the world, wrapped in a layer of pixelated warmth and the smell of afternoon snacks. These moments were more than just entertainment, they were formative. They shaped our understanding of connection, of safety, of a world that, at least on screen, made sense. The characters we loved faced challenges, yes, but there was always a resolution, a sense of order restored. We learned to expect that, to believe in it. This was the backdrop to our afternoons, the soundtrack to our early years. It was a time of dial-up internet slowly creeping in, but our primary windows to other worlds were often these glowing screens offering escape and a predictable rhythm in a life that was just beginning to unfold its complexities. Think about the simplicity of those desires, to catch the latest episode, to see what our animated heroes would do next. There was an innocence there, a belief in the straightforward nature of things. The world outside the cartoon bubble was, of course, real and present, with its own lessons and hurdles. But for those precious hours, we could immerse ourselves in narratives where courage was rewarded and kindness was a superpower. These weren't just shows. They were companions teaching us in subtle ways about loyalty, perseverance, and the comfort of knowing where you belonged, even if it was just on the couch in front of a familiar glow. This foundation of comfort and predictability is important to acknowledge. It's not about romanticizing the past or wishing we could return there. It's about understanding the starting point. It's about recognizing the deep-seated longing for that sense of security and clarity that seemed so readily available in our early years. This longing isn't a weakness. It's a testament to the power of those foundational experiences. It's the first chapter in our story, a chapter filled with bright colors and the gentle hum of a world that felt for a little while perfectly safe and soundly understood by us. Then, almost without warning, the credits rolled on that chapter of our lives. We stepped out from the glow of those screens and into a world that felt vastly different, far more complex than any cartoon plot. The transition to adulthood for many of us 90s kids felt like being handed a map written in a language we hadn't quite learned yet. The clear paths we thought were laid out: study hard, get a good job, buy a house, start a family, began to look more like winding, uncertain trails. The promises of a straightforward life, mirroring the stability many of our parents experienced, started to fray at the edges. The pressures mounted subtly at first, then with increasing intensity. There was the pressure to succeed in careers that were rapidly changing, often disappearing or morphing into something unrecognizable. There was the pressure to achieve milestones by a certain age, a timeline that seemed to be universally understood, yet increasingly unattainable for many. We were told we were the generation of opportunity, the inheritors of a prosperous world, yet we found ourselves navigating economic downturns, a gig economy, and the dawning realization that the old rules might not apply to our game. This wasn't a 30-minute episode with a neat resolution. This was real life, messy and unpredictable. We carried the expectations of a generation that came before us, one that often experienced a different kind of economic stability and societal structure. They worked hard, and for many, the system rewarded them in visible, tangible ways. We worked hard too, often harder, juggling multiple responsibilities, further education, and the constant need to adapt. Yet the traditional markers of adulthood, a stable career, home ownership, financial security, felt like they were constantly shifting further out of reach. This created a quiet dissonance, a feeling of running a race where the finish line kept moving, leaving us feeling breathless and at times a little lost in the grand scheme of things. This wasn't a failure on our part, it was a collision of old expectations with a new, rapidly evolving reality. We were caught in the cross-currents of change, a generation straddling the analog past and the digital future, trying to make sense of it all. The comfort of those cartoon afternoons felt like a distant memory as we faced the complexities of adult decisions, financial burdens, and the search for meaning in a world that no longer offered simple answers, or guaranteed outcomes. This transition period was, for many, the beginning of a deeper questioning, a search for a new kind of map. This feeling of being stuck or overwhelmed isn't just anecdotal. It's a pervasive experience for so many of us who came of age in the 90s. We often find ourselves juggling demanding careers, the echoes of student loan debt, the rising cost of living, and the quiet anxieties about the future. It feels like we're constantly running on a treadmill, putting in immense effort, but not always seeing the forward motion we were taught to expect. This isn't a sign of weakness or a lack of resilience. It's a natural response to a unique set of circumstances that have defined our adult lives, a heavy cloak we often wear in silence. Compare this to Gen Z, who grew up as digital natives in a world already saturated with information and characterized by rapid, visible change. They witnessed our struggles, perhaps learning from them, and entered adulthood with a different set of tools and expectations. While they faced their own significant pressures, their baseline understanding of the world was formed amidst this constant flux. For 90s kids, the shift felt more seismic. We had one foot in a world that promised stability if you followed the rules, and the other in a reality that showed us rules were constantly being rewritten without notice, creating a sense of profound uncertainty. The sheer volume of information and choice can be paralyzing. We were the first generation to truly experience the explosion of the internet in our formative and young adult years. Suddenly, every option, every path, every potential pitfall was visible. This wasn't the curated world of a few television channels. This was an endless scroll of possibilities and comparisons. The pressure to make the right choice in career, relationships, and even lifestyle became immense because the perceived consequences of a wrong turn felt magnified. This constant exposure without the developed filters of a fully digital native often led to analysis paralysis and a pervasive sense of not measuring up. This sense of overwhelm is compounded by a culture that often emphasized individual achievement over collective well-being. We were taught to be self-reliant, to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. But what happens when the bootstraps seem to be missing or the ground beneath us is constantly shifting? We internalize the struggle, believing it's a personal failing rather than a systemic issue or a generational challenge. This quiet burden, this feeling of being uniquely stuck, is a heavy weight to carry, and it's time we started talking about it openly and honestly with each other. Our upbringing in the 90s, for many, was characterized by a certain set of instructions, a kind of life blueprint. Parents, often baby boomers or older Gen X, passed down the wisdom they had acquired. Go to school, get good grades, find a secure job, and life will unfold neatly. There was an implicit promise that if you followed these steps, stability and happiness would be your reward. This was the prevailing narrative, reinforced by a society that at the time seemed to operate with more predictable cause and effect relationships in terms of career and life progression. This created a foundational belief in order and a linear path. This blueprint mindset, while well-intentioned, often left us unprepared for a world that increasingly demands improvisation. The economic landscape shifted. Technology revolutionized industries overnight, and societal norms evolved at a dizzying pace. Suddenly, the clear step-by-step instructions didn't always lead to the promised destination. This wasn't a failure of the blueprint itself, but rather the ground beneath it had fundamentally changed. We were trained for a marathon on a paved road, only to find ourselves navigating a dense, uncharted jungle, requiring a different set of skills and a different kind of resilience. This dissonance between our upbringing and our adult reality has had a profound impact on our collective mindset. It can lead to feelings of confusion, frustration, and even a sense of betrayal when the promised outcomes don't materialize despite our best efforts. We might find ourselves asking, I did everything I was supposed to do, so why isn't it working out? This questioning can erode self-confidence and create a tendency to look for where we went wrong, rather than recognizing that the entire game changed. It's like being given a detailed recipe for a cake, only to find the oven works differently, and some key ingredients are no longer available. In contrast, Gen Z largely grew up observing this shifting landscape. They saw the internet's ubiquity from a younger age, witnessed economic volatilities more directly in their formative years, and perhaps absorbed a greater sense of adaptability as a core requirement for navigating life. Their blueprint, if they were given one, was likely sketched with more caveats and dotted lines. For 90s kids, the challenge lies in unlearning some of the rigidity of our initial programming and embracing the discomfort and creativity of improvisation, learning to write our own instructions as we go along page by page. Section 5. The economic tightrope and the wellness chasm, our unique burdens. The financial realities for many 90s kids have been a stark departure from the relative stability their parents might have experienced. We entered the workforce around the time of significant economic recessions, shouldering unprecedented levels of student loan debt for educations that didn't always guarantee the promised high-paying jobs. The dream of home ownership, a cornerstone of the previous generation's financial security, became a far more elusive goal, with property prices soaring while wages often stagnated. This created a persistent feeling of walking an economic tightrope where one misstep could lead to significant financial strain. This financial insecurity has a direct and often unacknowledged impact on our overall well-being. The constant stress of making ends meet, of juggling debt payments with the rising cost of everyday essentials, takes a toll on both physical and mental health. Access to affordable health care, including mental health services, can be a challenge, creating a wellness chasm where those who need support most may struggle to find it. We were often told that hard work alone would lead to prosperity, but many found themselves working multiple jobs or incredibly long hours just to stay afloat, leaving little room for rest, recovery, or personal pursuits. The narrative of lifestyle creep is often misapplied to our generation. It's not always about desiring extravagant luxuries. For many, it's about striving for a basic level of security and comfort that seemed more attainable for previous generations. The pressure to maintain a certain standard of living, often influenced by the curated images on social media, a technology that boomed as we became adults, adds another layer of complexity. This can lead to feelings of inadequacy if our reality doesn't match the perceived success of others, further exacerbating financial anxieties and impacting our sense of self-worth in profound ways. Furthermore, the shift towards a gig economy and less stable employment models means that traditional safety nets, like pensions and comprehensive benefits, are less common. This leaves many 90s kids facing a future with greater financial uncertainty than they might have anticipated. The burden of planning for retirement, caring for aging parents, and potentially raising children in this economic climate feels immense. These aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. They are daily realities that shape our choices, our stress levels, and our capacity to thrive, not just survive, making it a critical area to address for our generation. Section 6. Echoes in our hallways. Unpacking emotional inheritances. Beyond the economic and societal shifts, many of us carry emotional inheritances from our childhoods that shape our current behaviors and thought patterns. The parenting styles of the 70s, 80s, and early 90s, while often loving and well-intentioned, sometimes emphasized compliance, politeness, and perhaps a children should be seen and not heard mentality more than emotional expression or boundary setting. We learned to be good kids, to follow the rules, and often to suppress our own needs or discomfort, to maintain harmony or gain approval, internalizing these subtle lessons. These early teachings can manifest in adulthood as people-pleasing tendencies, difficulty saying no, or a fear of conflict. We might find ourselves overextending at work, in friendships, or in family dynamics, driven by an unconscious desire to be helpful, to be liked, or to avoid disappointing others. This isn't a character flaw. It's often a deeply ingrained coping mechanism learned in childhood, a strategy that once helped us navigate our environment. However, these patterns can lead to burnout, resentment, and a feeling of being disconnected from our own authentic desires and needs, living a life directed by others' expectations. Another common emotional inheritance is a discomfort with vulnerability. If expressing strong emotions or showing weakness was subtly or overtly discouraged in our formative years, we might have learned to build walls around our hearts. We might struggle to ask for help, believing we should be able to handle everything on our own. This stoicism, while perhaps seen as a strength, can lead to isolation and prevent us from forming deep, authentic connections where we feel truly seen and supported. It's like carrying a heavy backpack alone, unaware that others might be willing to help share the load if we only knew how to ask. Recognizing these emotional patterns is the first courageous step towards change. It's not about blaming our upbringing or our parents. It's about understanding the origins of our behaviors with compassion. It's about seeing these echoes from the past not as fixed parts of our personality, but as learned responses that we now have the power to examine and, if we choose, to gently reshape. This unpacking process allows us to separate who we were taught to be from who we truly are and who we want to become, fostering a new sense of inner freedom. Section 7. Igniting the spark within. Pathways to reclaiming our lives. The journey out of feeling stuck begins with a spark of awareness, a gentle acknowledgement that perhaps the old ways of thinking and being are no longer serving us. This isn't about a massive overhaul overnight, but about small intentional shifts that can lead to profound changes. One of the most powerful first steps is cultivating self-compassion. We, the 90s generation, have navigated incredible changes and pressures. It's time to offer ourselves the same kindness and understanding we so readily extend to others. To quiet the inner critic that says we're not doing enough or aren't good enough. A vital pathway to reclaiming our lives involves redefining what success and happiness truly mean to us, separate from societal expectations or inherited blueprints. Perhaps success isn't the corner office or a specific income bracket, but rather a life rich in connection, purpose, and peace. This requires introspection, courage, and the willingness to disappoint others in service of our own authenticity. It means tuning out the noise of comparison and tuning into the quiet wisdom of our own hearts. What truly makes you feel alive? What values do you want to guide your choices, regardless of external validation? Another crucial element is learning to set healthy boundaries. For a generation often raised to be accommodating, saying no can feel like a revolutionary act. Yet boundaries are not about shutting others out. They are about protecting our energy, our time, and our well-being so that we can show up more fully and authentically in our lives. This might mean saying no to extra commitments when we're already stretched thin, or clearly communicating our needs in relationships. It's about honoring our own capacity and recognizing that our well-being is just as important as anyone else's well-being. Finally, connecting with others who share similar experiences can be incredibly healing and empowering. Knowing that you are not alone in your struggles, that others understand the unique pressures faced by our generation, can lift an immense weight. This could be through informal conversations with friends, joining support groups, or finding online communities. Shared stories foster connection, reduce shame, and can inspire collective action and mutual support. We found comfort in shared cartoon experiences as kids. We can find strength in shared adult realities, now building new communities of understanding. Section 8. Daring to be different. Rewriting our scripts with courage. Breaking old habits and ingrained thought patterns is an act of courage. It requires us to step out of our comfort zones, those familiar yet constricting spaces we've inhabited for so long. This isn't about becoming a completely new person, but about allowing more of our true selves to emerge. It means daring to challenge the shoulds and ought tos that echo from our past and from societal pressures. What if we decided that good enough is truly good enough? What if we chose progress over perfection, embracing the messy, imperfect journey of growth? One practical way to start rewriting our scripts is by practicing mindfulness and self-reflection. This doesn't require hours of meditation, but simply taking a few moments each day to check in with ourselves. How are we feeling? What thoughts are dominating our minds? Are these thoughts helpful, or are they rooted in old fears or limiting beliefs? By observing our inner world without immediate judgment, we begin to create space between our triggers and our reactions. This space is where we find the power to choose a different response, a response more aligned with who we want to be. Embracing imperfection is key. Many of us grew up in an environment where mistakes were seen as failures. But what if mistakes are simply data points, opportunities for learning and course correction? When we allow ourselves to be imperfect, we open ourselves up to experimentation, creativity, and resilience. The fear of not getting it right can keep us stuck. Daring to try something new, even if we stumble, builds confidence and shows us that we are more capable and adaptable than we often believe. This is where true self-trust is forged, in the willingness to show up imperfectly. This process of rewriting our scripts also involves seeking out new narratives and role models who embodies the qualities you wish to cultivate. What does a life lived on one's own terms look like to you? It might be different from traditional definitions of success. Find inspiration in those who live authentically, who prioritize well-being, and who navigate challenges with grace and courage. Surround yourself with influences that uplift and expand your sense of what's possible for your own life. This isn't about comparison, but about inspiration and permission to define your own path forward. Section 9. Stepping into our sunlight, crafting a future on our own terms. The beautiful truth is that our story isn't over. It's still being written, and we hold the pen. The feeling of being stuck, while heavy and real, does not have to be our final chapter. For 90s kids, a generation uniquely positioned between two worlds, our strength lies in our adaptability, our empathy, and the quiet resilience forged through navigating unprecedented change. We've seen the old ways crumble and have been tasked with building something new, often without a clear guide. This is not a curse, it is an invitation to innovate, both in our own lives and collectively. Living on your own terms starts with that radical act of self-acceptance. It means embracing all parts of yourself, the bright spots, the shadows, the quirks, and the dreams you might have set aside. It means understanding that your worth is inherent and not tied to your productivity, your relationship status, or your bank account. This acceptance is the foundation upon which you can build a life that truly reflects your values and desires. It is a quiet revolution fought within the landscape of your own heart, a turning towards yourself with kindness and belief. Hope is not a passive wish, it's an active practice. It's choosing to believe in the possibility of a better future, even when the present feels challenging. For us, this means taking small, actionable steps each day that align with the life we want to create. It could be pursuing a passion project, investing in a relationship that nourishes you, advocating for your well-being at work, or simply taking time for rest and joy. These actions, compounded over time, create momentum and shift our reality from one of feeling stuck to one of empowered movement and purpose. So, to my fellow 90s kids, let us acknowledge our unique journey, the pressures we've faced, and the strengths we've cultivated. Let us release the outdated scripts and embrace the courage to write our own endings. Our experiences have equipped us with a unique perspective and a deep well of resilience. It's time to step out of the shadows of overwhelm and into our own sunlight, crafting futures that are authentic, meaningful, and joyfully our own. The world needs our analog heart and our digital age wisdom. Let's dare to live fully on our own terms, starting today.